sings, all exclaiming, indescribable, uncontainable. You place the stars in the sky and you know them by name. You are amazing, God. All powerful, untamable, awestruck we fall to our knees as we humbly proclaim. You are amazing, God. Who has told every lightning bolt where it should go? Or seen heavenly storehouses laden with snow? Who imagined the sun and gives source to its light, yet conceals it to bring us the coolness of night? None can fathom, indescribable, uncontainable. You place the stars in the sky and you know them by name. You are amazing, God. All powerful, untamable, awestruck we fall to our knees as we humbly proclaim. You are amazing, God. You are amazing, God. Indescribable, uncontainable. You place the stars in the sky and you know them by name. You are amazing, God. All powerful, untamable, awestruck we fall to our knees as we humbly proclaim. You are amazing, God. Indescribable, uncontainable. You place the stars in the sky and you know them by name. You are amazing, God. Incomparable, unchangeable. You see the depths of my heart and you love me the same. You are amazing, God. You are amazing, God. The splendor of the King, clothed in majesty, let all the earth rejoice, all the earth rejoice. He wraps himself in light, and darkness tries to hide, and trembles at his voice, and trembles at his voice. How great is our God! Sing with me, how great is our God! And all will see how great is our God. And age to age he stands, and time is
Amen. Thank you. You may be seated. Welcome to Ashland Church. Today is an amazing day because it's a day that the Lord has made. We'd like to invite you all to fill out a communication card, especially if this is your first time here with us. If it's not, we'd still love for you to fill it out. We have physical ones that are in the offering pews in front of you, but you have a couple other options too. You can go online to ashlandchurch.com/register, or you can also download our church app. You can look for it in the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, and you can fill out the communication card from there as well, whatever you prefer. And we also have giving available through those same methods, either on our website or the envelopes in front of you in the pew, as well as on our app. We've got all the links to all the things you need in there as well. Hey, you guys are on it. Rapid fire. I love it. Church directory. So we have already done all of our sign-ups, but I know that there are some of you who still have not taken your picture. So if you still need to, come find either myself or my wife or Nathan, and we'll try to figure out some timing when we can get you guys in there to get your pictures taken. We want to make sure that we get everyone in there so we can update it and have a wonderful updated photo directory. Also, Family Fun Day is coming on Saturday, July 22nd. We do need volunteers. We also have need if someone would like to donate anything, whether you have something that you are looking to donate directly, or if it's financial, whatever way you feel like God is calling you to support, or if it's just with your time to be there to help on the day, please see Sandy, and she will be able to get you hooked up and help with that. Also, we have our America for Christ offering, which is one of the offerings that our American Baptist churches participate in. And it is a program designed to help spread the gospel of Christ to everyone throughout America. There's more information on our website. If you just Google America for Christ, you'll actually see on the American Baptist website all the information about that. And that is a special offering in addition to our regular giving that we have at church if you feel moved to give in that method. And then work day is still coming soon, July 14th. We do still need volunteers. Oh, 15th, yep. I know that date is wrong on that slide. We have sign-up sheets for that out on the foyer, on the information desk in the foyer as well. So if you wanted to, you can definitely sign up out there, and we would love to have you. We can make our church beautiful. I think that's all the slides that I have, but I have a couple more. Oh, no, I do. I have a couple more slides. Okay, so prayer walk. We are going to be, after our service today, this is when this is starting. This is something we've talked about for a while. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more in my sermon later today too, but this is the first day that we are starting this journey, this milestone as a church. Committing as a church, we'd love to get about 90% participation, at least if we can, of folks that are just willing to commit to say, yeah, I'm going to pray throughout the summer, but I'm going to do it a little bit more intentionally than maybe I am used to. So how do you do that? Well, we have these prayer walks that we are creating. There's several options, and we're going to train you how to do that after the service today briefly. We have a journaling prayer walk, a social media prayer walk, a neighborhood prayer walk, a church prayer walk, and a nature prayer walk. So if you're not sure what any of those mean, that is totally fine. Come after the church service. Don't go anywhere right once the sermon is done. We will give you the information that you need, the training that you need to get it done, and it'll be amazing to just see how God is able to move all of our community through prayer. If you want to do more than one, you are certainly welcome to. We're actually going to demonstrate and show you all of them to you briefly this morning as well after the service. So maybe you thought you were going to do one, and that's fine, but you also heard about this other one that you think, hey, that sounds pretty cool. I could maybe do that too. You'll be able to listen in and hear all of the options available to you. All right. And I think that's all my slides now. Yes, okay, cool. A couple more quick announcements. In your bulletin, you'll see there's information about the Taba Picnic at Cass Road Baptist Church. That's our local Baptist church association here in the Toledo area. It's at 2 p.m. today, I believe. I've gone before. It's a really fun time. They're asking if you bring a dish if you can. I'm not sure how the weather is going to hold out, but I think they do have an indoor option, so we should be fine there. But that is an amazing, amazing time. Anytime you go over there, just a fellowship with our churches in our area, our fellow American Baptists in the Toledo area. And then beyond that, we need help. We need greeters this summer. So if you are interested in serving as a greeter this summer, please see Nathan after the service. He would love to get you some more information on what's needed, but basically all you need to do is be willing to come about 20 minutes early and stand at one of our 2 doors and greet people as they come into our church and give them a wonderful welcome smile. Whether you feel like you want to serve all summer or if you can just do a single week, whatever you're able to do to serve, we would love to have you. So please see Nathan with any amount of ability that you are able to serve, and he will get you set up with that. Youth group is going to continue into the summer. So after church service, we typically we cease temporarily, I guess pause would be a better word, our adult Sunday school throughout the summer. But we're going to continue youth group. We've been having a great time, and we're going to keep it going. So from the church service getting over about 11:15 till about 12:30 or so, we're going to hang out. We're going to have a lesson. We're going to have some food, and we're going to have some fun out in our youth room. But that's where you all come in, because that word I said a couple minutes ago, food. Teens like food. I like food, but teens like food a lot. And we need some help with food. So if you feel like you're able to provide maybe a meal one week, please see me and we can work it out. If you just want to buy pizza for the kids, that's fine too. Whatever it is, any form that you're able to, it would be awesome to provide some food for our teens so that they can have a meal and they won't be hungry while they're here past our normal lunchtime. So see me after church if you feel like you would like to help with that, and I can get you signed up and we can figure out what week works for you. And is that everything? Did I say everything? I believe I did, yes. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. I'll share in our prayer time with that, yes. Okay, so for this point, though, I would like to call up Maria and all of our 3 graduates that are listed. So Autumn and Kyle, I don't know if he's here, and Zachary. Thank you again, Zachary, for that beautiful trumpet solo earlier. That was amazing. Maria is going to share a little bit about our graduates this morning that we are recognizing, and then we do have a little presentation for you too. So let's see, you can probably grab this microphone here. Cool.
Good morning, Ashland. One of the privileges that the Christian Education Board gets to assist with here at Ashland is honoring our graduates. As these young people embark on the next stage of life, we pray they shine the light of God's love in all they say and do. What I've done is I've gotten a chance to kind of sit down and pray about and think about each of these individuals specifically, what they've done here, how we've gotten to see them grow up, or how they've served in our church. So we're going to be sharing that now and kind of just giving them a chance to reach out to our church, and then we're going to pray for them when we're done, okay? So first, I have Autumn. Autumn is a graduate from Clay High School. Autumn has been a helpful hand here in church with WOW. Something that comes to mind about Autumn, and she doesn't know I'm going to say this, is her time when she was running with my kids as a junior high cross-country runner. She always worked to improve her time, and she always did it with a smile on her face. She would always encourage her teammates as well as the other runners, even if they were ahead of her. And it wasn't unusual for me to hear other parents comment about what a kind young lady she was. And every time I'd hear them, they'd look at me because they'd see me yelling for her, and they'd think I was, related or something, and they're like, "How do you know her so well?" I'm like, "She goes to church with me." And I remember her always being such a blessing to those around her, so I wanted to share that. And in that kindness, she's continuing on and is planning to attend the University of Toledo in the fall with a major in nursing. So I feel that is quite appropriate for someone who's always been so kind and considerate. Congratulations, Autumn.
Congratulations. And we have this for you. Thank you. Congratulations.
Now, even though he's not here, I'm going to still share Kyle's because he's a part of us. Kyle was a graduate from Clay City Academy, and one of the things I remembered most is I really got to know Kyle when he went on one of our Youth Point Fest outings. He wasn't feeling real well, and things got a little hairy for a while. We had to take him to the first aid center. And after sorting out how to best care for him, he persevered and enjoyed the rest of his day. I have no doubt as he embarks on life's journey, he will push through whatever obstacles may arise. So we're going to go ahead and clap for Kyle, even though he's not able to be here. And last but not least, we have Zachary Bushman. Thank you so much for that performance this morning. Zachary Bushman is a graduate from Lake High School. Zachary's been volunteering with the food pantry here at Ashland for the past couple years. In addition to serving here, he has quite a list of scholastic achievements and activities, including Tri-M, National Honor Society, student government, track, soccer, band, and he is the Lake School Class of 2023 valedictorian. I could have gone on with the list of things that I was given from him, but I knew I had a certain amount of time to do this during service. So I really just appreciate someone who works as hard as he has. Clearly, he's done a good job. Zachary plans to continue his academic success by attending University of Toledo with a major in computer science. Congratulations.
Boom. Congratulations. Thank you. All right. Congratulations to our graduates. Thank you all very much, and we hope and pray that God will be with you throughout the rest of your life, whatever path that takes you down. We'll be praying for you. Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. All right, and now we will move into our prayer time. And yes, I do have a couple things to keep in your prayers. The first of which is, unfortunately, I was really excited about today because we had a couple of our youth from our church were going to be heading down to Camp Kirkwood for a camp this week. And unfortunately, they had to cancel camp this week down at Camp Kirkwood, which is just very sad. But they had a fire over the weekend there. And it has, the fire, from what I understand, the fire department has shut them down for the week until they can kind of assess further. So we don't know yet what the future of other camps throughout the summer will be at this point. I don't know if there will be any sort of reschedule or what that'll look like. But we definitely want to keep the camp in our prayers, the camp staff, the students that we're going to be going this week, and any students throughout the rest of the summer as well. I know that's definitely a super disappointing thing. But we want to just pray for that entire situation, just bathe that community and that camp in prayer. Also, I would love for you to keep our pastor, Jeff, on his sabbatical, and he is going to be with us in a couple of months, but we would appreciate your prayers as he is looking to just refresh, renew, and recharge and come back ready to serve all of you. Any other prayer requests that I have missed? I know there are many needs, but we'll bring them all to God. So let's pray. Dear God, we come before you today. As we plan, sometimes our plans are changed, but we know that we can take comfort in the fact that that's okay because they're your plans, and your ways are not our ways. It's hard to do sometimes, but we trust in you. We pray I pray that you would move powerfully through the staff there, through the fire officials that are investigating and trying to help the camp. And for those who Yeah, it's the infinity. So to get to infinity and beyond it's infinity distance away, right? I had to throw that one in there. Okay, how about this one? This is our second to last sign. Do you guys know what that is a sign telling you? Welcome to Ohio. That's right. It's a state line sign that tells you you've left another state and now you're entering the state of Ohio. Okay, now here's our last sign. Who knows what that sign is? I heard it over here. AJ told me, yep, the Bible. That's right. Did you guys know the Bible's a sign? No? Does the Bible tell us what to do? Are there parts in the Bible that tell us what not to do? Are there parts in the Bible that tell us what direction to go and what to do in our life? Kind of, yeah. All of those are kind of. The Bible actually is a sign too. It's a sign from God that he gave to us with his words that he wrote down, and he is using it to tell us, here's where you go, here's what you do, here's what you should do, here's what you shouldn't do. Remember that happy birthday sign? It tells you, hey, here's what you should do if you want to have fun, if you want to be doing the right thing and have a great time. It tells you all of those things that you need to know. So the next time you see a Bible, say, hey, there's a sign. I see a sign. And then go find out what it's telling you to do. All right. All right, so that's all for Picnic with the Pastor today, but let me pray for you real quickly, and then we'll go to WOW, okay? Dear God, thank you so much for these children and for all the children that may be watching online as well. I pray that you would bless each of them, help them to follow the sign of your Bible, and please be with them every day, God. In your name, amen. All right, now you can go to WOW.
It's time for WOW. All children age 4 through 5th grade, follow the banner carrier and make your way to WOW.
This is a light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This is a light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This is a light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
It's time for
We bow our hearts, we bend our knee. Oh Spirit, come make us humble. We turn our eyes from evil things. Oh Lord, we cast down our idols. Give us clean hands, give us pure hearts. Let us not lift our souls to another. Give us clean hands, give us pure hearts. Let us not lift our souls to another. And God, let us be a generation that seeks your face, O God of Jacob. And God, let us be a generation that seeks your face, O God of Jacob. We bow our hearts, we bend our knees. O Spirit, come make us humble. We turn our eyes from evil things. O Lord, we cast down our idols. Give us clean hands, give us pure hearts. Let us not lift our souls to another. Give us clean hands, give us pure hearts. Let us not lift our souls to another. And God, let us be a generation that seeks your face, O God of Jacob. And God, let us be a generation that seeks your face, O God of Jacob.
The Pharisees came and began to question Jesus. To test him, they asked him for a sign from heaven. Why does this generation ask for a sign? That is the deep sigh and the exasperated question that Jesus asked in Mark 8:12. It seems noteworthy that Jesus asked specifically about this generation rather than just addressing the group of Pharisees who had asked him for a sign just then. In fact, Jesus spoke about this generation on more than one separate occasion. But what did he even mean by this generation? Well, the Greek word that Jesus used for generation means very close to what we would expect it to mean. While it may not carry the exact same connotation as we understand that word today, and nothing really does due to cultural, historical differences, that word that is used here is actually used to just refer to groupings of people based on when they're alive. It's presumably also taken to mean that these groupings have similar shared characteristics, such as what they care about or how they tend to respond in certain situations. In Mark 8:12, we read that Jesus is speaking about this generation, and it says that he sighed deeply, but other translations also just record this moment even more descriptively, saying he sighed deeply in his spirit. Have you ever sighed so deeply that it felt like you were sighing deeply in your spirit? It makes me think of a parent who's been asked a million times for the same thing over and over again, and finally just lets out a big sigh and says, "Why do you keep asking me for this?" And as I've mentioned, this was not the only time that Jesus was asked for this same thing. The Synoptic Gospels, which are the Gospels Matthew, Mark, and Luke, which all very closely parallel each other just from slightly different authorial perspectives, record a total of 4 instances of Jesus talking about this generation asking for a sign. Matthew 12:39, Matthew 16:4, Mark 12:8, which is our verse that we just read, and Luke 11:29. We have Mark to thank for this sermon today because he was apparently ahead of his time and a fan of Jeopardy before anyone else, because his version is the only version in which Jesus' words are in the form of a question. And that is the reason that our primary text is from Mark, to match with our theme for this year, answers to the questions that Jesus asked. But in comparing each version, along with reading them in context and understanding what events precede and follow them, we discover that the incident that Mark describes is at least the second such recorded incident of Jesus being asked for a sign. Even though it's only 2, the very fact that we do have 2 separate recorded incidents of almost the same situation happening again give us a clue that Jesus was probably asked this on a fairly regular basis. And to top it all off, the incident from our text in Mark 8, along with its parallel in Matthew 16, took place right after Jesus had performed an incredible, miraculous sign, the feeding of the 4,000. While it's not certain, it does appear likely that these Pharisees and Sadducees who asked him for a sign were not with Jesus during that miracle. They had just missed an incredible sign, an act of love that he performed for literally thousands, a massive crowd. And then when he goes into a different region, all of a sudden, once he arrives, he's bombarded by them as they ask yet again for a sign. All this puts Jesus' exasperated sigh into a more complete context. But something tells me, though, that even if they would have been there and witnessed this miraculous sign, it still probably wouldn't have even been enough for them. Jesus was probably so frustrated in this moment because he had performed so many signs and miracles that he couldn't fathom how they could still be asking him for more. The crowds that followed him seemed to be on the same page. Why were these religious leaders still asking for more signs? As if he needed to still prove himself for some reason. You know, there's a famous quote that's attributed to John D. Rockefeller, who is the wealthiest American in history and one of the richest people in all of modern history. He was asked about his wealth and how much money was enough. And he famously said, "Just a little bit more." How many signs did the Pharisees, Sadducees, and the rest of their generation need to see before they would understand that Jesus' authority and message were imbued with the authority of God the Father? Well, apparently the answer was always just a little bit more. Mark does not record much of Jesus' frustrated response beyond the fact that he says, "No sign will be given this generation." But Matthew's parallel depiction expounds a little bit further, saying, "No sign will be given it except the sign of Jonah." What could he mean by this? Well, earlier in that narrative in Matthew chapter 12, Jesus had brought up the sign of Jonah when he is, can you believe it, asked for a sign. He explains the sign of Jonah in chapter 12, verse 40, by saying, "Just as Jonah was in the stomach of the sea creature for 3 days and 3 nights, so the Son of Man will be in the heart of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights." Spoiler alert, Jesus is spoiling the end of the story for them, foreshadowing his own 3 days that he would spend in the tomb before being resurrected, the ultimate sign of all signs. And he likely knew that they probably still wouldn't even comprehend the meaning behind what he was saying. So he continues in verse 41. "The men of Nineveh will stand up at the judgment and condemn the people living today, because they repented at the preaching of Jonah. But look, something greater than Jonah is here, and that something was the arrival of himself, the Son of Man. That generation would now have to decide, how are they going to respond to the sign that was given to it, the greatest sign of all signs, the resurrection of Jesus? So what is a sign? Well, if you were paying attention earlier to Picnic with the Pastor a few moments ago, you know that signs show us what to do or what not to do, or they give us direction on where to go, how to respond, who to follow. Does anyone know what the first sign was that God made? Not the first sign he performed in the sense of a miraculous or monumental event, but a physical sign. And no, it's not Scripture, but it does have instructions of what to do and what not to do. Any guesses? Not sure if I'm hearing it. There might be a couple arguments to be made for a couple different things, but I consider the first actual sign that God made to be the Ten Commandments. This is actually not, of course, the original one, but this one I did get from Israel. This is made with wood from an olive tree, and it has the Hebrew lettering on it for each of the Ten Commandments that God had given and written down on a physical object, a physical sign. Have you ever wondered why the Ten Commandments were a physical object? They were actually likely the very first instance that we know of the recorded words of God. Now, there may have been some forms of earlier stories that were written down that we don't know of, but tradition holds that the first 5 books of Scripture, as we know it today, which would be the Torah, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, were likely written mostly by Moses. But you know what was created before all of this was written down? The Ten Commandments. The Torah was eventually written down as an even more detailed physical sign, which, when read, tells us what to do and what not to do. It gives us direction. In fact, all of Scripture can now be considered a sign for us. It points us towards God, and it directs us to live a life that follows Him. But there are other forms of physical signs that do this too. One very large one, in fact. Our world around us is itself a glorious sign which testifies to the existence and power of God. We're reminded of this fact in Romans chapter 1, verse 20. "For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse." Now, before we move on, I want to point out one other interesting aspect of this question that Jesus asked. Why does this generation seek a sign? We know that Jesus was quite fluent in the entire canon of Jewish Scripture, what we now refer to as the Old Testament. That means he would have been familiar with Psalm 24, the psalm that inspired the song that we just sang. Here are verses 3 through 6. "Who may ascend the mountain of the Lord? Who may stand in his holy place? The one who has clean hands and a pure heart, who does not trust in an idol or swear by a false god. They will receive blessing from the Lord and vindication from God their Savior. Such is the generation of those who seek him, who seek your face, O God of Jacob." Now, if we read this psalm in light of Jesus' question, we might then understand it to mean, why does this generation seek a sign instead of simply seeking God's face with clean hands and a pure heart, trusting only in God? Jesus longed for them to understand this, but they were missing the point entirely. So now that we've discussed how signs play a part in our daily lives, let's return to a discussion about that other word that Jesus used in his question, generation. So how do you define a generation? Well, if you ask people today what generation we're currently in, you'll still likely get a variety of answers depending on who you ask. But I'm going to tell you the typical divisions of generations that last about, from the last 140 years roughly, which is about as long as generations have been given formal names like this. Now, I would love it if you all could participate here. I think it will be a very interesting, quick little experiment to highlight a little bit about the makeup of our own congregation as we prepare to look at things through a generational lens. And if you're watching online, you can leave a comment, but I would love if you, when you hear or see on the screen in a moment here your generation, you can raise your hand. Now, I understand that may be a little hard for some of you. If you choose to abstain, I understand, but if you don't abstain, remember, you're in church. But seriously, please join me if you're willing. Let's take a look at these generational divisions that we have. And I don't think we'll have anyone for the first one, but let's throw it up on the screen now, guys. Thank you. First of all, we have the lost generation, which was for folks that were born between 1883 and 1900. They're probably about like 140, 125 years ago, roughly. After that, we have the greatest generation, those that were born between 1901 and 1927. Some were still alive today. They would be over 90 years old. I don't believe we have anyone here from this generation. If we have anyone from the next one, though, remember, please raise your hand if you are from this generation. The silent generation, for those born in between 1928 and 1945, we do have some, and they would be roughly around late 70s to early 90s, anywhere in that range. Thank you. After that, we have baby boomers. Okay, got a lot more hands there. Yep. Born 1946 to 1964, late 50s to mid to late 70s. And then, following baby boomers, we have Gen X, which would be those from 1965 to 1980, those in their mid-40s to late 50s. Cool, got some there too, perfect. And then we have Gen Y, also known as millennials. That's me, that's my generation. Those born between 1981 to 1996, those who are in their mid to late 20s, and all the way up to their low 40s. Yes, millennials are no longer the youngest generation. Some of us are over the hill. And some of us are quickly approaching it too, as I am. But we have two more to go. We have Gen Z as well. Gen Z, for those, is those that were born between 1997 and 2012. Do you have anybody here? Yeah, we got a couple. These would be people that are anywhere from 10 years old to their mid-20s. And then last but not least, Generation A. We just started the alphabet over again. What's after Z? I guess we go back to A. This one may change what name it's come to known as. It's still in progress. It may get a catchy nickname like Millennials did for Gen Y. We don't know, but we'll have to see. It's still going from those born in 2013, about 10 years ago, so 10 years old and younger. My kids are in this generation. So anyone that is in that era, they would be considered Generation A. There's probably about 5 years or so left on that one because these tend to go in about 15-year increments. All right, thank you guys for participating. I know that might have been hard for some of you, so how you doing? Okay, well, thank you. All right, so this idea of categorizing and grouping people according to their generation, it's not a new concept, but it is one which has recently become of keen interest to marketing teams for companies all over the world. And that makes perfect sense when you think about it. If you want to sell goods or services to people, it's probably going to be helpful to understand as much as you can about your target audience or audiences, what's important to them, what is their biggest concern, what are their stressors, how they even consume media. Take, for example, television shows throughout the generations. Years ago, families would gather around a TV set to watch the latest episode of their favorite show, but there was no way to record it. So if you weren't there, you missed it. The invention of a rolling cart for the TV set was so novel because it allowed for greater mobility, and it made it possible for a family to still eat dinner at their regularly scheduled time by rolling their TV into the dining room and not missing their regularly scheduled program. That situation is actually highlighted perfectly in the movie Back to the Future, which is my favorite movie. When Marty McFly time travels back from 1985 to 1955, while he's eating dinner with the Baines family, their father rolls their giant black and white box TV on over on a cart into their dining room. He's excited at this new innovation and how it's going to impact their family routine. We can watch Jackie Gleason while we're eating TV, while we're eating dinner. It's so great. And they actually are watching the show, The Honeymooners. And Marty accidentally blurts out that he's already seen the episode. It's a classic. This is a rerun. And And remember, this is 1955. The kid at the table looks over at him in his Davy Crockett cap and he asks, dead serious, "What's a rerun?" So Marty catches himself and he's filled with instant regret and he just replies cautiously, "You'll find out." That's true, because the next generation would indeed experience television shows differently once again. Not only were shows rebroadcast regularly as reruns, they were also able to be recorded on a VCR and watched later on a VHS tape. If you don't know what those acronyms are, find someone older than you and ask them. This innovation meant that people no longer had to set a schedule around a show that they wanted to watch. If they wanted to go somewhere or they had something more important to do, they could, because they could always come home and watch it later, or hope to catch it on a rerun if they forgot to schedule the VCR. It also meant that they could do something on those rewatches, which certainly mattered to marketing departments of companies. They could fast forward the commercials. Now, companies had to either make sure that their ad caught people's attention before they could reach that fast forward button on their remote, hope that they lost the remote in the couch and couldn't do that, or focus their efforts on some other form of advertisement. Maybe if folks are out traveling more, maybe a billboard is going to be more effective. These are decisions that companies had to make and adjust to. And the next generation, my generation, was able to experience the luxury of streaming shows on demand in any internet-connected device, further freeing people from the confines of their living room. Now you can watch the latest episode of your show literally anywhere, anytime, on any size screen, even smaller than this. Now, this also changed the advertising in the marketing world, because online video ads, they were often either drastically shortened or they can now be skipped with a single tap of a button. Taking it one step further, the youngest generation today, today's teenagers, they're beginning to reject TV shows more and more in favor of shorter, more succinct content, such as TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Snapchat, and many others. It's as if our collective attention spans are shortening even more with each subsequent generation. Many of these generational habits, though, are hard to break. Someone who grew up without being able to fast forward ads might not think they're too bad and be less likely to fast forward because they're more used to them. Or they might say, "This is the greatest invention ever. I am never going back. I'm never watching another commercial again if I can help it." Whereas others who grew up in an age where everything's presented rapid fire and can be easily skipped, they might grow impatient and not stick around long enough for a company to make their point if it's not done quickly. Or they might say, "Hey, what's this ad? I've never seen this before. This is interesting." It goes both ways. So why am I talking about all this stuff in a sermon? Well, generational trends like these tend to be very similar for the majority of people within a certain generation, which, as I've said, makes it easier for companies to target their advertising towards the generation or generations they're hoping will buy their product. And the reason I'm sharing this is that I believe there's a lot that the church can learn from this approach. After all, one way to think of marketing is that it's really just an attempt to convince someone of something so that they will buy in to what you're offering. And we, the church, are offering the best thing possible to the world around us. Something that money can never buy, but something that we certainly hope to convince the rest of the world to buy into: the life-changing gospel of Jesus Christ. So it can only help our efforts to think about who our audience is and what generation they're from when trying to share with them the truth of the gospel. As the Apostle Paul said in 1 Corinthians 9:22, "I have become all things to all people so that by all means possible I might win some." Another way to understand the heart of that verse is that Paul is saying he's willing to find any possible way to connect with people to save them, and he also recognizes that at times he will have to change his approach in order to remain effective. A one-size-fits-all presentation of the gospel, unfortunately, just doesn't always cut it. The beauty of the gospel is that it is the power of God for those who are being saved, and there are a lot of different people out there that God desires to save from every generation. I'm not talking about changing the actual content of our message, but the methods we use and the medium through which we present them may sometimes benefit from some changes in order to be more effective in connecting with different generations. There's a famous communication theorist named Marshall McLuhan. His work still resonates today and is studied very closely. I was actually introduced to his work while I was at seminary. There's a reason for that. The emphasis of my Master's of Divinity degree was in worship theology and the arts. And I studied a lot of various artistic forms of media and how they can help us understand ways that theology connects to our soul when we experience them. I love tying together these pieces to help people understand what God could be saying to them through different forms of media, both Christians and non-Christians alike. It's a great way to connect and find a common starting place to start a conversation. Marshall McLuhan's main contention is the phrase, "The medium is the message." Remember that. The medium is the message. Medium being the singular form of media. So let me break down what this means. The medium is the message. Let me break down how that also connects to our understanding of how we, as well as any generation in our culture, may differently experience and connect with God. Forms of media can shape how we as a society interact with each other and even the very way that we view the world. For example, it's quite common for us in describing an event that happened, like, let's say, a family vacation, for example, to do so in a dramatic way, turning it into a story. Depending on the generation, some of us may be more likely to communicate in many of these same ways that a movie or a TV show does, even if we're doing it subconsciously, filling it with all sorts of drama to make your story more exciting, and also speeding up certain parts that weren't very exciting. Marshall McLuhan observed that movies, and by proxy television shows, play heavily with concepts such as speed and time. And that's so true when you think about it. A movie rarely depicts events in real time. The TV show 24 is one of the only examples I can think of that does actually tell its story in real time. Each of that show's 24 episodes in a season was an hour long, and it took place over a 24-hour period. But that show was an anomaly. Most shows and movies instead are more likely to depict events that happen over a much larger span of time. A 2-hour movie might take place over the course of a whole day, or a week, or a month, or even years. Movies and TV shows do that through a variety of ways, one of which is a montage, where you see small snippets or highlights that communicate the sense of time passing. Usually there's music underlying that as well. It's a great tool, and many movies use that quite effectively, some not so effectively. But tools like that have shaped how we sometimes think of telling stories without even realizing it. These are the things that we consume and watch all the time. We don't need to know all the details in a story, just the big moments, which can represent the progression of a story or the development of a character. One famous movie montage which immediately came to my mind was Rocky Balboa training in the snow in Rocky IV to fight Ivan Drago, while Survivor's Burning Heart played underneath that montage. And if you've seen that movie, you just pictured that in your head. Movies are a powerful tool, able to connect with our emotions and our memories so easily. And that's actually a very inspiring montage. Before it, Rocky was not ready to face Drago in the ring. But after the montage, we as an audience now believe that he at least has a shot. When we recently went through the story as a church, I loved how the teen version had what were essentially animated video montages each week, catching us up with, using those same methods, with everything that has happened in the story of the Bible up until that point, and summarizing it and communicating it very clearly, unlocking powerfully for youth the story of the Bible as it unfolds. Montages can unlock emotions in us while also telling a story in a much different way than the way stories have been told in ages past. So if you go back to that example of the family vacation, a simple question like, "How was your vacation?" might be answered in a way that communicates a sense of that overall narrative, as well as the emotion of those key moments to someone that you're explaining it to, much like a montage. And in light of that, how might you choose to respond if someone asked you a question like, "What does Jesus mean to you?" Or, "Why are you a Christian?" Whether you realize it or not, the very fact that you might even think of things like this in terms of a narrative is a result of the impact that these new forms of media have had on our lives since they were created. Media formats that indisputably impact an entire generation at a time. Yes, stories have always existed throughout human history, but the changes that occurred to the storytelling process portrayed through media, such as movies and TV shows, have altered how we tell those stories. And this is because of the power of images. A single piece of art, whether it takes the form of a painting, a photo, stained glass in a cathedral, architecture, or even a motion picture, can convey an idea more easily than words sometimes. Have you ever stopped to think about that? The next time you look at a piece of art, whether it's stationary art like a painting, a photo, architecture, or if it's a moving form of art like a movie, a TV show, or even music, try to stop and observe yourself in that moment as you're experiencing that piece of art, if you can. It's pretty incredible how God wired us, that we can have an emotional response, sometimes very deep emotional response to something like this. And it's not just Christians who have an emotional response to things like this, it's all of humanity. The common starting point for shared human experience that we can use to connect with someone else, strike up a conversation, hopefully help them understand where that emotion came from. People often wonder how to reach a seemingly hard-to-reach generation. How can we connect with them in ways that will help them come alive? Well, I can tell you one thing. Movies, TV shows, all other sorts of art, both new and emerging, are finding ways to connect with them. It's up to us as a church to recognize them, to educate ourselves, and to use them as points of impact, to ignite a spark that can grow a real connection or unlock a curiosity that can lead to a deeper relationship with God, the Father of all emotion and reason. Remember, the medium is the message. Media is a major method through which this generation seeks a sign. Now, before I close, there's some interesting and I would say inspiring data about younger generations that I'm going to share with you. But before I do, I want to encourage you that if you feel God is calling you to minister to a particular generation, whether it's to peers in your own generation or to a younger or even an older generation than your own, there are a plethora of resources out there to help you learn more about that generation in order to make that easier. To become, as Paul said, all things to all people, in order that you might save as many as possible. One such resource about generations that I have found tremendously helpful and filled with eye-opening insights is the Pew Research Center. They're a nonpartisan organization that uses responsible data collection and surveying techniques to conduct research, present facts and insights on demographic and social trends, not just for the U.S., but all parts of the world too. Allow me to share some insights from them, which I have found helpful in ministering to younger generations, that I hope will inspire and empower you to find ways to minister to and pray for the generation that God lays on your heart. About 1 month ago, actually, Pew Research published an article about teens and social media. Here's the title. More than half of U.S. teens say it would be difficult for them to give up social media. 36% say they spend too much time on social media. Related to this, a Pew Research report in December 2022 said nearly half of U.S. teens have been bullied or harassed online, with physical appearance being seen as a relatively common reason why. Further complicating the relationship between today's youth and social media is a November 2022 report. Majorities of teens credit social media with strengthening their friendships and providing support, while also noting the emotionally charged side of these platforms. But not all social media is created equal. Social media doesn't just mean Facebook. Does anybody know what is the generation that's currently reported to use Facebook the most in terms of highest percentage of time per week? Gen X. Gen X, actually. Yep, those born between 1965 to 1980. Whereas the short-form video app has replaced, TikTok has replaced Facebook as the most used form of social media for the youngest defined generation, Gen Z, today's teens. Now here are some further insights about that younger generation. In April 2022, Pew Research published, in CDC survey, 37% of U.S. high school students report regular mental health struggles during COVID-19 pandemic. Mental health struggles are a serious reality for a large portion of youth today. In September 2020, Pew Research published a particularly insightful report. Religious nuns, and I do not mean N-U-N, N-O-N-E-S, nuns, which means those who do not identify as Christian or any other religious affiliation. Their affiliation is none, which is actually about a third of all teens in the U.S. Religious nuns of teens are just as likely as other teens to report feeling a deep sense of wonder about the universe. Just as likely as other teens who are religious to report feeling a deep sense of wonder about the universe. That seems like an indication that there is fertile ground and the field is ripe for harvest. The youngest generation is seeking a sign. Who's going to give it to them? And what happens if it's not the church? There's one other piece of noteworthy research from Pew that I want to share with you in light of what we talked about today. Lately, older generations are behaving more and more like younger generations in the ways they consume media, how they handle their finances, and many other aspects. And this is mainly due to the increasing presence of technology in our world, no matter what generation. Technology has been called the great equalizer in this sense when it comes to generational study. It's in many ways a medium of its own. When we view this fact in light of Marshall McLuhan's contention that the medium is the message, how might the medium of technology affect our strategy for how we go about spreading the gospel to each generation? It would appear that technology at least has to be a part of it. As we close, I know that Ashland Church already does many things that take advantage of technology, and we're blessed to be able to use it to spread the gospel. I often find myself thinking about these things and wondering, are there other ways we can work within the medium of technology to spread the message of Christ? And that's one of the reasons why I'm personally so passionate about the social media prayer walk that I'll be leading the training for in a few moments after this service. But I also recognize that everyone has different motivations, passions, skill sets, availability, and especially spiritual giftedness and tendencies, which is why we're also offering many other types of prayer walk options so that you can participate in these prayer walks as a part of our church body however you feel God is calling you. It's an exciting milestone of progress for Ashland Church that we are undertaking this today. I look forward to seeing how God is going to move through the power of your prayers. A praying church is a powerful church. And I can't imagine Satan will be all that pleased with the idea of us committing to doing this. So I know that he's going to find ways to hinder it. Whether that's through busyness, gotta get going, or I don't have time to do this, or whether it's through tiredness, distractions, discouragement, or anything else. But I encourage you to step out in faith to tell God, take my life and let it be used for you. To remain steadfast and give it your best shot, because the power of prayer is how real change can happen. And if you want to start ministering to a generation, prayer is an excellent first place to start. As you begin to learn about your chosen type or types of prayer walks after the service and practice it throughout this summer, I hope that you will keep in mind that no matter what generation you or anyone else is a part of, we're all seeking a sign, which can ultimately only be found in Jesus Christ. Praise team.
Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to Thee. Take my moments and my days, let them flow in ceaseless praise. Let them flow in ceaseless praise. Take my hands and let them move at the impulse of Thy love. Take my feet and let them be swift and beautiful for Thee. Swift and beautiful for Thee. Take my will and make it Thine. It shall be no longer mine. Take my heart, it is Thine own. It shall be Thy royal throne. It shall be Thy royal throne.
As you go from this place, again, a reminder, please stay after for our prayer walk trainings. We'll have the leaders come up here, and we're going to get started very quickly, and we'll get you guys out of here as soon as we can, but we do want to share all of our wonderful prayer walks with you. I'm not going to give a traditional benediction because I want you guys to stay in here because we're going to keep this going. We're going to do our prayer walk training right after this, but I will bless you all for those who do have to go. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May He make His face shine upon you. May you always remember that no matter what generation you are from, that you are loved and that God loves you. And may you use that love to bless someone else this week. Amen. And if we could have the leaders from the various prayer walk groups just come up front real quick here. And we'll use that microphone. That'd be perfect. Yeah. Welcome. I don't know. you can stay in here too. Okay.
Chapter 9 of Genesis.
All right, so we are going to keep this relatively casual, but we're going to kind of go down the line. These are each, myself and these four ladies are our coaches, group leaders, whatever you want to call it, for our prayer walks. And really, this is a very informal thing. It's not very strict. You don't have to say, I'm signed up for this one, so I have to do this one. If you hear something from one of the groups today that you think, that sounds pretty cool, I could do that too, you certainly can. You can do more than one prayer walk. You can do all of them if you want. Whatever you feel is healthy for you, whatever you feel like you could actually commit to and follow through with this summer. And we're not going to check up on you every week. We're not going to say, like, did you do it today? Did you do it this week? We certainly may, of course, gladly welcome if you have any great testimonies of some awesome things that happened as a result of these prayer walks that you're doing. That would be great to hear. And we'll do maybe a couple check-ins once or twice throughout the summer. But overall, it's more between you and God. And we would just want to give you the tools to do that in a lot of different ways. So we'll take turns and share about what each one of those look like. I think I'll let Nancy go first, and then we can just kind of go on down the line. And we do have a microphone, so
I am Coach Nature Walk,
there we go.
Nature Prayer Walk. And I am encouraging all of you that are signed up to do that one, or if you just want to do it on your own. Just like Gary said, I happen to fall in that social media, a lot on my phone. But when I walk, I take my phone with me. And when I'm out there, or if I sometimes leave it at home, I see something really cool that God has created, and I think, oh, I want to take a picture of that. Or, oh, this is, and it triggers in my mind something about God. So my challenge to you is to, as you're doing your nature prayer walk, to snap a picture of something that has taken you by surprise or reminds you of God while you're walking. And if you don't have a camera or don't want to use a camera, you can draw a picture and make like a little book of time as it goes through. And keep that in a special place. Put those pictures aside and, make a little statement about each one. And it'll kind of make a book and kind of a journey as to your prayer walk as you're going on your nature walks as well. So that's my challenge to you.
And if you guys have questions about these two, we'll stay up here for a minute or two afterwards if there's anything kind of burning questions, by the way.
I am Lynn Fuller, and I am the church prayer walk coach. To me, to do the church prayer walk, our church is available Monday through Friday from 9 to 1. I feel it's important to come inside, go from room to room, maybe even come in the sanctuary, pray over the people that come here, the ministries that are shared, to let God know we're thinking of them, trying to keep them in touch closer with you. But if you can't come inside, you can even park in the parking lot and look over the building and say a prayer for anyone who attends here or might want to attend here and come. Just keep all of us in your prayer.
My name is Sandy Potter, and I'm doing the journaling prayer walk. And journaling is something anyone can do, and you can do it if you're doing all of the prayer walks. You can still do journaling. You can do it once a day. You can do it once a week. A lot of times you can get up in the morning and say, just write in your book, God, I'm giving this day to you. And maybe that helps your day start out more positively. Maybe you won't do it till the end of the day, and you say, God, thank you for this day. Thank you for whatever good things you might have happened in your day. And if you had some slip-ups, then you just say, God, thank you for today, and thank you that maybe you'll give me a tomorrow to kind of build on what I did today or to correct what I did, because there's always that opportunity with God. Whatever you've done wrong is never the last thing you do. So, and then maybe you just do it once a week and you say, God, I thank you for the week, or I thank you that it's over, or thank you that it's coming up, whatever. But you always have that opportunity. I keep a book, just a book just for that, and I put the date in there, and sometimes you might sit down in the afternoon and just want to, write out a psalm or something, just something that draws you back into God. Sometimes, we get up in the morning, we have good intentions, but then during the day we kind of get drawn out of that closest with God. So I just sit down and write, even maybe it's just a few lines from a psalm. But it's something you can do no matter what prayer walk you've chosen. This is something you can do above and beyond just because you do it on your own time.
I guess I'm a little bit of an overachiever. I brought handouts. So if you're doing the neighborhood prayer walk and you want a handout, you can come get one afterwards. So I won't go through the whole thing, but a couple of main points for the neighborhood prayer walk, which first of all, if your neighborhood is not easily walkable, maybe you don't have sidewalks, but you kind of have the heart to do this, you could choose maybe the neighborhood around the church, the neighborhood right here behind the church. I think that would be a great opportunity as well. My first, suggestion is to print out a map or draw a map of your neighborhood, of the area that you plan to walk. We live kind of near a big intersection, so for us, we have kind of 4 different quadrants from our intersection that we walk in. So whether we choose one of those or, walk all 4 of them, maybe pick one a week or something to go through. But you can kind of start labeling places on your map of people, if you know their names, or the businesses. And as you go through, you might meet new people as you're out walking that you can add to your map, just to kind of keep track of the things that you're praying for. And if you cannot walk your entire neighborhood, maybe you can drive through it. Do it with a partner, and one person can drive and the other person can pray out loud in the car. I really like the idea of prayer walking through the neighborhood because it just gives you a tangible way to keep you focused as you walk and keep your eyes and your heart open to what you see around you, which will cue you in, just like Nancy was saying with nature. It'll cue you in on what to pray for. And one of the things important with that, I think, is in interactions with others. I just encourage you to see any interruptions as you do your prayer walk as God interruptions, that is God's divine appointment for you while you are walking. So if somebody, in the neighborhood stops to talk to you, embrace that. It's not interrupting your prayer. It's a part of your prayer for your community. And if they ask you what you're doing, go ahead and tell them. You don't want to be showy walking around, praying, screaming your prayers out loud or whatever. But if someone asks you, feel free to say, I'm praying God's blessing over our community. What could I pray for you about today? Or what needs do you see in our neighborhood that I could pray for? And while it is not the main goal of a prayer walk to do things, right, to put things into action, you might begin to see needs, to begin to develop a heart and have God's eyes for your community, where you see ways that you can bless people. Maybe somebody comes to you and does ask for prayer throughout this process, and you could even offer a blessing over their home. House blessing is something that we do weekly, actually, at home, Gideon and I in our homeschool, that you could offer to your community if anybody is particularly struggling. Those are a few tips.
Okay, and then I'm good. Thank you. Um, so mine is the social media prayer walk. And that is probably the most unique one because how can you walk on social media? That doesn't work. But it's a walk in quotations, right? Since you obviously can't physically move. The idea here is that we approach our time on social media with intentionality, and that we are praying for those that we see or interact with on social media. Now, I want to be clear too, this is meant to be, of course you certainly and still should pray using our Ashland Church prayer page if you're on Facebook and you have access to that. This is designed to be distinct from that though. This is a separate thing. So social media prayer walk would really look like, as you're scrolling through your feed, if you're doing this intentionally, you would see someone's name that pops up, and if God puts that on your heart to pray for them, you can say a prayer for them right there. Pause your scrolling and just pray right there for them. If you see someone that has a need, of course you can pray for them. If they're asking for prayer or they're describing something that's difficult in their life and they're talking about it on social media, of course pray for them. You may choose to leave a comment or even just the prayer emoji if you want to, but what we don't want this to be is you just drop a prayer emoji on every person that you see, because that's not going to be effective. And let's be honest, a lot of the times we drop that prayer emoji and we don't actually say the prayer too. So let's make sure that if you are doing this, that it's an intentional set aside time, that you're saying, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to not scroll through social media just to kill time. I'm going to actually scroll through social media with intentionality, and I'm going to see how does God want me to use someone. I would recommend starting off with the prayer yourself so that you can center your mind in the right way. Distractions are going to be hard with this because the way social media is engineered, it's engineered to distract you. There's going to be ads that pop up. There's going to be funny pictures. There's going to be news articles that you're going to find interesting. People are going to be saying things that are going to get your mind thinking down a different train of thought. So you have to approach this with prayer yourself first, that God would keep you focused throughout this task. Maybe you need to set a certain time limit for yourself and say, I'm going to spend the next 5 minutes doing this, or 10 minutes, or whatever it looks like for you. Maybe it's every day, maybe it's once a week. Whatever you feel like you need to do to commit to doing this regularly, whatever that looks like for you, that's what I would encourage you to do. I think that was about all of my main points. Also, if someone is asking for prayer, or if you feel led to pray for someone, different people have different approaches and understanding of prayer and different levels of sensitivity to it. And this goes for just in person as well. Some people are comfortable with you praying with them in person. Some people are not. And so, like we've done similar things where we've walked around in our neighborhood and asked people if we can pray for them. Some of them said yes. Some of them said no, would rather that we not. And we want to respect that. Very similar approach on social media. So if you do feel like you want to pray for someone, or if they are asking for prayer, it's probably okay. But if you feel led to pray for someone, you could do it a couple ways. You could do it in a comment, or I would say probably the most appropriate way is if you feel led to do this, you could send them a private message and say, hey, I saw your post. Is it all right if I pray with you? Or you could even say, if you feel like it is, you could just say, hey, I saw your post. I want to let you know that I'm praying for you. Maybe even write out your prayer and send it to them so that they can, it's almost like praying out loud. You can send it to them so that they can hear it and see that prayer too. But just be respectful of people and understand that they do have different approaches to that. So that's basically it for mine. If there are any outstanding questions, I'll open it up for just a couple minutes here for you all to ask. And also afterwards, if you have some that are specific to one of us, to one of the prayer walks, you can certainly come up and ask us too. We should have your contact information. If you're interested in one that you haven't signed up for, go ahead and put your name down on the sheet out in the foyer too. The leaders who are leading and kind of taking charge of that group for the summer will know who it is that they can be also praying for as you guys approach this throughout the summer too. Guy, you had a question? Great. Any other burning questions or comments? Okay? Well, come up and see us again afterwards if you guys do, but thank you all for coming. I'm excited to see where God takes this.